I'll never forget this, Mike. This is wild. I had a bag of weed in my pocket, and I didn't realize that it was in those pants. As the leader in front of all these boys, and I got a bag of weed in my pocket.
You're on this track within the youth leadership, right? And you're also having these feelings where it's a little conflicted. I'm just trying to get a timeline. Were you ever getting further than thinking internally within the church? Were you thinking, I'm going to become a minister? I am going to be just a youth pastor? Like, where were you going with that?
Nope. I had been accepted to Concordia College. I was fully intending on following that path. Okay. And the Army was an option for me. The military was an option for me. Okay. And I thought if I did go into the military, then what I would probably do is just go in as a chaplain.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
But then before I turned 17, I had that moment where I just said, no, this isn't it. I'm not doing this church stuff anymore. I'm just not doing it.
Oh, so you fully came to that conclusion fairly early compared to a lot of us.
Well, what I realized was that I was carrying around so much hate for what I had been taught.
Yeah.
And I was really unhappy. I was just miserable inside. And the one thing that really made me happy was the idea of being a soldier, being a warrior.
Really?
I come from a long line of Native Americans on my side, and on my dad's side and on my mother's side as well, on the German side. They were all the men in my family were all either in the Air Force or Army, no Marines, but yeah, they all had military service and they had all seen combat. So I would have been the first one to not have seen combat, but then Desert Storm shows up, and then we have that conflict. But I forget exactly where I was going with that, but
you were at least mentally for a while, you were on track to continue your leadership role and move up the rank. Also, were you, just because we both share the Scouts, were you also in any kind of leadership role within Scouts at this point? Because you're not quite aged out.
Absolutely.
But, where are you at with that?
So then in the Boy Scouts, I became a patrol leader. I became the senior patrol leader. I was the librarian and I was the quartermaster because other kids just didn't want to do it. So I just took it up, Yeah. And I did well with it and I liked it. And then there's an additional part of the Boy Scouts called the Order of the Arrow. You have to get elected into it.
Yeah.
And I became the chapter chief for Sheboygan and part of Manitowoc County.
Okay.
So I was the chapter chief for that. And, brought up attendance and, and I could speak and I could, motivate people. And here I am drawing on all of that ability from being able to speak because of the church. And I would listen to my pastors and I was emulating them.
Yeah.
So that's what was happening. And I think the Boy Scouts was the last thing to go.
Okay. That's actually, I was going to ask you, how did you come out to them in any way? But I mean, specifically with the religion, because they both, obviously the church is religious, but the Boy Scouts, it's quasi-religious. I mean, some groups are more than others, but they
ours very much was
as a foundation. Like you said, I can't remember the oath now, but to God and country, it's in there.
Yep.
And again, depending on where that church or that troop is chartered, it can be very, very strong, or it can be just sort of casual. But none of them are really anti-religion, right? Did you tell anybody, or did you kind of keep that quiet because you liked Scouts, but you didn't want to get out, but at the same time you couldn't doing a lie? Like how'd you deal with that sort of thing?
I kept up the lie. I kept up the lie. I kept up the lie with the church and came up with reasons why my schedule became too busy, so I couldn't do this anymore and I couldn't do that anymore. But I'd still go to church. I would still sing the songs. I would walk the walk and talk the talk. And the reason that I did that is because I just didn't want to catch any flack. There's just, I figured it was just easier to keep my head down and keep moving on, but withdraw myself from any of the leadership roles because I felt like a hypocrite felt like a huge hypocrite.
Yeah.
And in the Boy Scouts, I was standing. I'll never forget this, Mike. This is wild. I had a bag of weed in my pocket, and I didn't realize that it was in those pants. I had a little bag of weed, and I was standing there while we're doing the opening for our meeting on a Monday night, and we're doing the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'm sitting here as the leader in front of all these boys, and I got a bag of weed in my pocket. I'm 17 years old, and I'm like, what in the hell am I doing? So I got out. I never got my Eagle Scout. I never did anything because I figured they're not pinning a Eagle Scout badge on me because I just wasn't, I wasn't Eagle Scout material, I didn't think. But I had almost every single badge you could possibly get. I had all these other responsibilities. And then just like when I was in the church, I started to come up with reasons why this, why I can't do this and why my time is being taken away. And you said it really well. The perfume and the gas fumes.
Yeah. The fumes will get you.
Yeah.
I mean, it's true.
I utilize
really
that
tough time to keep boys in, at that point, because they've got really strong distractions. And as much as canoeing and kayaking and hiking, that's a lot of fun. I love it. But, I also kind of like girls a lot too. So I can't do both, Join a venture crew where they had co-ed, But it's interesting. So did you ever come out while you were in any of these groups, ever come out as atheist or even bi, either way, or did you cut it completely off?
So I never came out until about I want to say a year or two after I met my wife.
Oh wow.
Or I should say to everybody else, but to my wife, she knew.
Okay.
Yeah. And she knew that I was atheist before we even met. I told myself that when I go into my next relationship, there's just no way that I'm going to hide myself. I just can't do that,
Okay.
So, yeah.
And how old were you then when you met her?
Well, I'm 51 and we've been together for 16 years. So I was in my 40s.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were
late 30s. Yeah.
Okay. And were you out in that period of time? Not
to friends and family or anything like that. There was one friend of mine that I was out to, and other than that, no. And one day I just decided I'm gonna send my stepkids a message on Facebook and let them know. And just be like, hey, if you see any posts from me on Facebook, just I need you to know and not be shocked that, I'm bi and have been all my life, but it just never came up. It never came up for any of us. So I never thought to mention it. But now I feel like I want to mention it, publicly. Yeah. And both my stepkids were like, hey, that's fine, Mike. No big deal. I treated it real easy and real bland, I guess.
Yeah.